Wohlfarth with us. Ray's an old friend. I'll introduce him more in a minute. But, I met him as the president of Fire and Ice Heating and Cooling, he and his son, two wonderful people. I've read him for years in PM Magazine and Engineered System. And Ray, I'm sure there's others that are there. So I got to thinking earlier this week. I said, I have your Steam book. I have your Lessons by Boiler Room. And I said, I wonder what other books Ray wrote. So I said, Ray's an author, and the Boiler Operator's Guide, and lessons learned, 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 and more lessons learned, and all the different topics. And then I came upon one that blew me away, a children's book, children's book called Farmer Frank's Forgetful Flock. And I say that, Ray, because the funny thing is that I just read your bio when I was looking at the coffee shop. Just come out. I'm waiting for it to be on Audible, and if it doesn't, I'll have to buy it in softback or hardback. And it said on there, it's the first novel you wrote, and I thought, well, Farmer Frank's Forgetful Flock is kind of a little bit of a book, but anyway, it's a nice special guest, and it goes without much to do. Here's Ray's email address if you want to get in contact with him after night. Ray at fireiceheating.com. And with this, I'm going to say,
Uncle Steve, before you go any further, Fire and Ice, they out in Jersey or New York, bud?
Pittsburgh. If you were here on time, you would know that he's in Pittsburgh. Ray is in
Pittsburgh. I saw that name before, Fire and Ice. I like that name.
Yeah. We can I tell you what happened with our name? We called it, when we redid our company. I used to have a partner, and we redid this company, and we decided Fire and Ice was a great name because we do heating and air conditioning. And I didn't realize there's a Fire and Ice competitive cheerleader squad in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
So I was out somewhere, and the lady looked at me, and she looked at the logo, and she looked at me, and she said, "Do you teach cheerleading?" And I said, "What?" And she said, "Well, there's a Fire and Ice cheerleading school here." I said, no, that's not me. I said, "We do mostly boilers." And then one night I get a call, said, "I need you to send someone over right away." And I said, "Okay." I said, "Do you have a problem?" I said, "You have no heat." He said, "What?" And I said, "Do you have no heat?" And he said, "Is this Fire and Ice escort service?" And I'm like, "No." I said, I didn't expect walking over with my tool bag on my shoulder going, "Hey, I'm here,"
That was good, Ray. That was good.
Not quite my type, but if you want to play house, I will.
I didn't expect that. I thought you were going to say, "Can you help my daughter out with her cheering?" I didn't think of,
oh my God.
Come on.
That's funny.
That's a good one. It's a cool name. I think it's a cool name.
I love it, and I love the logo. I love coming out to Pittsburgh and hanging out with you guys. I don't get as much time as I used to come out to Pittsburgh. I now only get out like every 2 months, 3 months, and I'm usually pretty busy. I have reps out there now that are handling that territory very well. But so I have to ask you, Ray. I wanted to talk more about your bio, but I figured I got blamed one time by a friend of ours, and Dan Foley. He asked me to introduce him one time at a convention, and I said, "Well, how much do you want me to say? Do you just want me to go up and say, 'Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you and welcome you to Dan Foley,' or do you want me to give you a whole, bio?" And he said, "Well, give me a bio," and I did, and Dan stood up and he said, "I don't have to speak anymore," and sat back down again. So I don't want to do that to you, and I want to ask you, Ray. We know you're in Pittsburgh, and Jason reminded us that he didn't know, but
I had internet problems. I'm in a hotel. I'm not sitting in my house in Maine.
So anyway, Ray, how and when did you get into heating and air conditioning business, and what led you into it?
When I was a young man, I wanted to be a lawyer growing up. My uncle was a lawyer, and he was my hero. And my mom and dad said, you got to get into heating. Everybody needs heating. So I said, okay, and put my goal of being a lawyer on hold. And so I got into the steam fitters local here in Pittsburgh, and I went through the apprenticeship, and I started off at Johnson Controls as an apprentice, and then I started to do more controls, and I really enjoyed it. I like the idea of controls because you never know what kind of system you're going to be dealing with, and in my mind, the controls people were the ones that make it work. You have to integrate everything, and so it made me more aware of systems. And so when I was a first year apprentice, I was sent to a job, and I worked on a HB Smith Mill Series boilers we were putting together, and I was fascinated with it. It's just, and I was lucky enough. We installed it, and as a first year apprentice, they usually move you down the road to the next job. They let me stay and work with the guy starting the boiler, and I was hooked. I mean, just the idea that you have that much power in your fingertips was just consuming to me, and I loved it. So,
That begs another question. It is something for us all to think about. Is why isn't today? Why don't we get the people today that look at what we do and have that feeling of wanting to be hooked? What do we have to do to attract new talent to the industry?
Well, it's funny you say that, because when I started out, I always thought a detective. When I would ride with my dad in the oil truck, he was a detective. I thought that was cool, and that's the way.
That's what I always loved about it, was the troubleshooting.
Yeah, I know.
Knew nothing about it, figuring out how to make it work. But let's see what Ray has to say.
What I do is I say I tell when I talk to a lot of students, and I talk to them about the benefits of our industry, and I say the real benefit is you can be independent as hell.
Oh yeah.
If you work for somebody, and like around here when I was growing up, the steel mills were really big, and when the steel mills closed down, there were all these people that had no skills, but they made tons of money, and all of a sudden they make nothing. So what I liked about the heating and air conditioning was that there's so many different areas you can go into it. But I'm telling the students now that you're in charge of your own destiny. If you want to work for somebody else, you can do it. If you want to start your own business, you can do it. You're not, if your company downsizes and gets rid of you, you got 5 other companies that are going to hire you, and you never have to worry about a job. And that's most of them respond to that.
I was going to say not to disagree, because that's absolutely an important part of being an independent contractor. But I'm talking about our industry in general. In other words, the argument you just made was a purely economic one, and I agree with it wholeheartedly. But why our industry? Like why not climate control, which is actually so important? Because that's really what we're doing. We're not just heating, right? We're controlling the environment, and that. Why can't we make that exciting, such that these kinds of that these entrepreneurial types want to get into it?
I think one of the things that hurts us is you're in some pretty crappy environments sometimes. You're up on a roof, and if it's a 75-degree day, it's great to be up on a roof. If it's 92 degrees or if it's 0, it's not so much fun. And I tell people this is part of it. What I like about it is that I guess I grew up and had ADD and was never diagnosed, but I love the idea. I can go from one job to another one. Like the whole idea of going to the same place, the same time every day would drive me crazy. I wouldn't be able to do it.
It's all.
And
But
one of the things I like is that if you have a a crappy customer, someone that you don't get along well with, the idea is you're only going to be there for a day or two, and then you're going to be somewhere else with someone else.
You have that same miserable boss every day.
Oh,
Ray, you say that, and I got into this business because I was working at my dad's supply house as a young teen. I was not allowed to play sports because of some injuries I've had in the past, and so they just put me in there. Well, it was a plumbing and heating business, and of course people were always looking for work, and so because I worked at a supply house, everybody assumed I knew how to plumb. And I walked into a garage one day and the guy said, "See that fitting up there? I need you to fix that. Here's a ladder and I have a torch and some solder. Go up and do that." And I had no idea what I was doing. So I called a friend of mine and I said, "Can you help me out?" He says, "Yeah, come on over." And he taught me how to solder. I went out and soldered it and it worked. And I was actually lit and never left my apprenticeship from that time. I mean, I was just 13 and it was fun, but when I got to be older in high school, of course, with ADD, like we all have, and I'm convinced that almost all tradesmen have it.
They do.
They couldn't teach me because they couldn't either keep up with me or they couldn't keep my interest. They couldn't apply what they were telling me. And my mind saying, "Screw this, I'm done." And so they sent me to tech school because that's where you send all the bad kids, right? And I went to tech school not for plumbing because I'd already been plumbing for 4 years at that point. I went to tech school for cooking because I needed to eat.
That's pretty good.
So how old were you when you started your apprenticeship?
I was about 19 when I
Okay.
started.
Cool.
And
And that was Steam Fitters Union, you said?
it was in 449 in Pittsburgh. And what I realized quickly was I would never, ever make it as a welder. Every time I tried to weld, my welding rod got stuck, and they finally just kind of pushed me through, and they said, "Maybe you ought to consider controls." And it was the best thing I ever did. So,
Oh, I've gotten the same thing. I went to college for a year, and the guy says, "You're too much of a free spirit. You've done really well. I mean, you have a 4.9 average, but I really don't think you belong here." And I was like, "Okay, I'll go back out in the field. I make more money than you do."
yeah,
At least you're honest.
I mean,
Oh,
this is a wonderful career for somebody. If I had one bit of advice for someone young is
Do it.
we all think we're invincible in our 20s and we do crazy shit like jumping off the back of trucks or hanging off the side of a building and
Or jumping off quarries.
yeah. And so like now my knees are like, man, why did you do that? And that would be the only thing. But I love this industry, and one of the things that I love about it is because of, I guess, my ADD is just when you think you got it figured out, it smacks you upside the head and says, "Hey, dummy, have you ever thought about this?" And every day you can learn something new about this industry that you never knew yesterday.
Well, that's a good thing. I think try to learn something new every day. And if you can devote yourself to a profession that you love, then, so much the better.
And how I got into boilers, what was kind of a mistake. I bought a company, and he was selling boilers. I wanted my own business, but what I love about the boiler business is that there's not a whole lot of people that know what they're doing. So usually when you get pulled in, it's a real problem. And the idea that you can fix it when there's been 3 or 4 other companies there, it's a great boost to your ego.
Mm-hmm. That is true.
Ray, and both you and I have done the same thing where we're the 4th, 5th, or 6th person in, and you walk in and you ask just to be left alone for 20 minutes, and people are, and you send everybody, go turn this thermostat up. The heating system could be off. Go turn the thermostat. Go away and buy your 20 minutes, and they come back and you come with a solution and you fix it, and they go, well, nobody else tried that. And they said, well, you didn't hire anybody else. And it goes back to that whole adage, first guy came in and charged $1,000 and was there a day. Another guy charged $1,000. He was there for a day. It's still not fixed. You come in and you charge 3,000, and all you did was hit it with a hammer and leave in 10 minutes. And the guy says, "Why do I owe you that money?" You said, "Well, it's $1 for the hammer and 2,900 just for the knowledge."
Right.
And really, I mean, that's what it comes down to. I mean, it's you and I rarely, and I know this because, you know, you have quite a reputation out there that you don't get on a job. You never leave before it's fixed, but B, you usually figure it out pretty quick.
Yeah, and I
So,
mean, I learned one of the sage advices I learned from Dan Holohan was he always preaches, don't try and diagnose a job site and truck on the way there.
mm-hmm.
I used to be guilty of that all the time, and I would go in there with my tunnel vision on. I'm going to look at this, and what I like to do is I like to go in there like a kid in a candy store, like you're just looking around trying to figure out what's going on, and the answer comes to you, you know. And I find out if I go in there with that tunnel vision, it's usually wrong, and then it's hard for me to switch gears and try to look around the system.
Yeah, doing forensic heating is kind of fun. You know, finding what everybody else has done not to help the situation. And I love people who walk into a job that's 90 years old, and a lot of steam systems that we've been on are that old. And they come in, well, I know the problem. All these traps are in the wrong place. And I want to say, you know, this hasn't been not working for 90 years.
Right.
Something changed, and it's not the system. It's something's changed, but it's not tearing apart the system or redoing the whole thing.
Steve may just to hit the nail on the head. Forensic investigation. I like that. That's how we got to run it. Forensic investigation. That's even better.
You know what, Jason, that's a good point, because I do my seminars, and I call it the boiler room detective. And
I remember
I take people on the trip, and I'll say,
and
I'll show them pictures. Like I'm doing one for all the schools in West Virginia in July, and I take them in and I show them these pictures, and I say, what do you see that's wrong? What kind of jumps out at you? And I always try to let someone save face. You know, like I never want to embarrass someone in there, but then I'll go through, and what I always tell them is that you know how to diagnose boilers, you just don't know you know how to do it. And
yeah, that's exactly correct.
One of the biggest problems you can find is if you try to use your air conditioning knowledge on a boiler, it's going to hurt you every time.
Well,
And
that's a good point you bring that up, because, you know, Teddy, we were talking about this the other day. You know, if you know a boiler circuit, you know, you have high voltage, low voltage, you know, you just ohm out everything, do a continuity test. But a lot of guys don't know that. But I like when Steve said forensic investigation. I like that. Sounds better. It's more attractive. Maybe we can get more guys in here then. That's a selling point. We need to use that.
Everybody said the same. Basically, it's detective work.
It is.
System that isn't working, as Steve said, I mean, it's been working for 90 years, so you know it's not a physical thing necessarily. It's not like an element of the system. It's something that's happened to the system. But as Ray Rayleigh points out, you know, it's having an open mind when you get there. It could be anything. Don't have a preconceived notion.
And we've all done television. We've all done the television. I don't think anybody in this industry does think, oh, it's got to be this. And it's a whole
and Ray, with age, you know, when we first started in this business, we all wanted to walk in knowing what the answer was. But as we got older, we found out that knowing the answer walking in is not knowing the answer, and that takes a lot of training and a lot of time and a lot of teaching, and self-teaching too. But so I wanted to ask you, so you do commercial, you do residential, you do steam, you do hydronics, you do God, I look at the books you've written. I look at the jobs I've seen that you've done. I've listened to your seminars. I've read some of your books. What is your favorite area of the heating and air conditioning world? What is your favorite thing you like to do?
My biggest fascination is steam, low pressure steam. What I love about it is everybody thinks, and I was taught, oh, steam's really inefficient. But if you think about it, you can shoot heat around a building all through a building for a couple ounces of pressure drop. There's no pump, there's no fan, there's no blower. And I like steam because a lot of people don't know about it and don't understand it. And when you get called in, and just like you said, Steve, they start adding all these different traps behind it. Like I like to, in the vein of the detective work, I ask a lot of questions when I go in there, and I'll ask a lot of questions about with the maintenance department or even the custodians, and I'll say, well, what's changed? What have they done? And what I'll give you, for instance, we serviced a steam boiler, and it was in a place where they were doing drug rehab, and it was where they slept. And every night at midnight, the heat would go off in the building, and every morning at 6 o'clock it would come back on. And I put data loggers in the building, and sure enough, the data logger showed the heat would go off every night, and every morning it would come back on. And they had a T87 Ron thermostat that everybody had on their house growing up, and it had a cover on it. We went nuts, went through the whole thing trying to figure out, well, maybe it's wired in with the outdoor lights, parking lot lights. What it turned out to be was we put a little bit of nail polish on the hinge, and we found out that someone had come in and opened that up. And here, one of the people in drug rehab was a heating and air conditioning guy who had a key for the dang thermostat lockbox. And every night he would open up. He hated to sleep when it was hot, and he was fighting his demon. So he would turn the heat off at night, let it go all the way down, and then every morning he would turn it back up before.
Clever.
But, yeah, but that's what I love about this industry. But steam just fascinates me. I like some of the old hydronics that they did with gravity, like just the idea. I mean, the pipes were huge, but just the idea that someone said, hey, the hot water is gonna be more buoyant than the cold water, and it's gonna flow against each other. Like, there had to be beers involved when they were figuring that out, right? I mean,
I don't doubt it, because they didn't have too much weed back then. But yeah, Rain, you say that in Philadelphia we have a ton of steam, and you know that, and I've worked a lot on steam, not on the big steam systems you have, but on on these little 10 and 12,000 square foot homes down in the main line, and I love it when people come in and they don't know the difference between a pressure troll and a vapor stat.
right.
And in the hydronic world, it's primary, secondary circulation and what flows going where, right? But in our world, in steam, it was, they seem to think that if they raise it up to 3 or 4 pounds, it's actually going to get there faster. And you've taught a whole bunch of people that you only need pressure when you have to have pressure.
Right.
And I go in those places, and I happen to have the $3,000 hammer, right? I mean, it's a $275 double vapor stat and a pigtail and a T, and I'm out of there in an hour and a half.
Well, what is really starting to fascinate me now too is the breweries. That a lot of them use steam, but those people scare me half to death. It's like the Wild West there.
Oh yeah.
And how I got involved with writing and consulting about steam for brewers was I was at a seminar, and there was this quote unquote expert. There was a steam expert for this breweries, and he's telling people, you got to run your low pressure boilers at 15 psi. And I would never embarrass someone in front of. So at the end of the seminar, I pulled this guy aside. I said, you can't do that. He said, oh yes, you can. I said, well, are you having issues where it's popping a relief valve or going off on limit control? And he's going, oh, all the time. You can't do that. And the hardest thing for me is to try to talk to people about trying to keep it like around 11 psi. You get the best results, and there's not much on there. But I'm fascinated with those. And we had I got a call one time. A guy owned a crab house in Baltimore. And he was one of those guys where, scary as anything, he said to me, he had a low pressure Weil McLean boiler rated for 15 psi. Well, he wasn't getting enough heat out of it to make his crabs the proper way. So what he did was he got a pressure trough from a hydronic boiler set for 35 psi, and he put on there. And I said, well, you can't do that. He said, well, I did. And then he told me that, I said, what about the relief valve? He said, well, he put a 50-pound relief valve from a hydronic boiler on his low pressure steam. And I said, and you can't do that. I said, what does a boiler inspector come in and say when they come into your building? He said, oh, I don't tell them I have any boilers. And then to top it all off, he said, you should come down here. I'll give you free crabs. And I'm thinking, there's no way I'm going to go anywhere near your place because something's going to explode and it's going to destroy the place. But
and you say that, Ray, and I want to double back to some books here first, but I just want to say that I was in a brewery also in Maryland, and they were having banging problems in the brewery, and I walked out, and the pipe comes up from the boiler and then goes. It's pitched down because of settling of the business, and everything's on clevis hangers. At the very end, it comes up a little, and goes over to the boil kettles, and then down to them, and it's obvious it's trapping water at that. And I said, all you have to do is just tighten up those clevis hangers and raise that up a little bit. Do it slow so you don't break anything, and get that so it's pitched back to where it was designed to be. And the guy says, well, how do you expect me to do that? And I said, well, I'm telling you how to stop the banging, but if you want to keep going, your brewers are going to be upset because they're not getting the steam they want, and you're going to be pissed because you're not getting the beer you want. And it was a never-ending story, and the place eventually went out of business. But I so love, and I've pushed in the brewing industry because both you and I are involved in it, which is amazing late in life that we're both in the brewing industry, right? And and you wrote the steam book, and then you wrote the maintenance book for the brewing industry,
right?
And it couldn't have been. The timing was excellent, and I still can't believe that. I would love to know what your sales are on those two books.
They do really well.
Good, excellent.
And we are on the microbrewers website, and they buy a lot of my books. I just got an order from them the other day. It does really well. But like I said, steam's my passion. I like the idea that you can heat a building with just steam vapor. So, but we've sold a ton of hydronic boilers, and I was one that. Can I tell you a quick story about how I got my butt handed to me on my first hydronic boiler?
Oh, I love you too, for God's sake, absolutely.
This is your time, man.
They just introduced these condensing boilers with the manufacturer I was with, and the paper said, the brochure said, it's up to 98% efficient. I said, oh. So the customer said to me, he had an old cast iron boiler, atmospheric. He said, how much am I going to save? I'm like, oh, you are going to save 35 or 40%. He said, really? I said, oh, yeah, I said, it's going to go from 78% up to 98%. I said, it's going to be amazing. So he said, okay. So he decided to go with them. And the first year, he calls me up about 2 months into the heating season. And he said, didn't you say I was going to save about 40% on my heating costs? I said, oh, yeah. I said, oh, you should be counting your money now. He said, I'm not saving anything. I said, well, that's impossible. I said, there has to be something wrong. So I went out to the job site and I looked it all over, and I compared his energy usage from one year to the next. And what it turned out to be was it was a misapplication of a condensing boiler. We had put it in there, and he ran his water year round at 180 degrees because he wanted to heat his domestic hot water, and he had a pool heater on it. And so if you run a condensing boiler at 180 degrees, you're probably going to get about 85% efficient, 83.
88, yeah.
And so we were like, okay. So it kind of got me gun shy. And so I started to do all this. I guess I'm kind of OC. I tried to figure out how I made this mistake. So I started to go through all the old books and literature, and it turned out that, that all these old hydronic systems were all designed for 180-degree water. Back from 1912 or 1899, I can't remember when it was, but they were all designed for 180-degree supply water. And so what I did was I started to come up with ideas, and I said, well, a condensing boiler is really not going to be really getting high efficiency until you get to shorter times of it. So I designed the first system that was a hybrid system here. I said, well, we're going to get a standard boiler 30 years out of it, and on a condensing boiler, I've heard anywhere from 15 to 20 years. So what I did was I said, I designed a control system, and I said, at 100 and at 32 degrees outside, I was going to switch my lead boiler to as it got colder than 32, my lead boiler was going to be the standard efficiency boiler, which was upper 80%. And then up above 32, I was going to have my condensing boiler as a lead. And what I found was that they got the efficiency of a condensing system with lower maintenance and longer life with it. And it worked out really well. But I mean, that's on a commercial building. It was a big university in West Virginia we did this with. And they got really good results with it. Like residentially, you're not going to do that. You're not going to, very seldom are you going to see two boilers in a place like that. But commercially, it worked out pretty well. And we started to get a lot of people that were interested in that sort of a thing where if they could keep the existing flue and keep one of their boilers, we can put the condensing boiler in as a kind of standby or for the shorter times, and it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, if you're doing a lot of high output high output equipment, absolutely. But modulating condensing boilers today have been phenomenal. But so let's shift gears a little bit. What is your favorite book that you wrote? Well, let me ask you this first. Wait a minute. Let me ask you this first. Why did you start writing books?
It was interesting. A friend of mine, I was doing an in-class or in-house seminar on boilers for his HVAC company. And he said afterwards, and I had it on PowerPoint, and he said afterwards, he asked, can you give me something in writing? So I thought, well, I don't want to I'm not going to give him my PowerPoint. So I thought, well, maybe I'll just give him the outline. And I thought, well, once I have the outline, I'll just fill in the blanks and put it in the book. And oh my God, I cursed him up and down for 2 years because it took me that long to get the first book done. But I love it, and so now what I do is.
Well, wait a minute. What was the name of that book?
Lessons Learned in a Boiler Room. It's my yellow covered one.
Yeah.
So what I do now is I try to write every morning from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. And it's kind of weird. Like when the book ends, I get kind of sad because I'm like, oh, I gotta find something to write about. And in between my books, I did the kids' book because my kids would tell me, Dad, you should do that book. It was a story I made up when they were kids. And I couldn't come up with a subject to write about for boiler. So I wrote that book, and then I found that I loved writing. And so I started to attend classes. I take a creative writing class twice a year. And I try to push myself in different directions. The last couple of years, I was trying to push myself toward writing a novel, and that's how I ended up coming up with mine. My favorite book is the one I did for service, because that's my #1 seller. And it's not because of that, but just the idea that I get more comments from people saying, hey, you really bailed me out on this job site. I used the tools you wrote in the service book, and it helped me a lot.
So that was lessons learned servicing boilers.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question, Ray. Okay,
Yeah.
maybe it's one you don't get too often, but what was the most interesting experience you've ever had as a result of writing a book?
I got asked to speak at the ASHRAE convention, and I did a class on lessons learned brewing with steam, and I was a nervous wreck, and because there was all these people in the room, and it was like my first real paid gig, and it was fun. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, so I mean, the benefit to the writing is you get these other experiences too. It's life enriching.
It is, and just the idea, like it adds a lot of credibility to you, and it's easy to publish a book now. You just get on Amazon, and it adds a lot of credibility when you walk onto a job site because you're like, oh, that's the guy that wrote the book on boilers. And so since I'm doing my writing from 6 to 8 every day, I'm always looking for something new to write about, and so I felt that there was no more to write about on boilers for now, but
I don't know. I think you missed a few things between servicing boilers, replacing boilers, connecting boilers, selling boilers, raise rules for HVAC, a guide for home inspectors for people who should stay out of the goddamn boiler room. Did I say that? Commercial and steam boilers, your lessons learned in a boiler room, replacing a steam boiler, brewing with steam, and maintaining steam boilers, both of the last two for breweries. And I'm promoting you in both the hydronic world and the brewing world. And you're killing me with the books you're writing. It's great.
Thank you. It's fun. I like to think that I can take something technical and make it understandable for the guy in the field. And that's what I wanted to do. Like I love listening to someone like John Siegenthaler. I have no freaking clue what he's saying, but he is the smartest guy I ever met, and a super wonderful guy. I just my head just doesn't grasp numbers like that, and so what I did was I'm using some of the stuff in the book as stuff to help me understand. Like I used to belong, or I still belong to ASHRAE, but like some of these really complex formulas, I'm like, there has to be an easier way of doing this because my mind just couldn't comprehend them. What's that?
There is.
So.
Well,
there is. Right, Uncle Steve? There is.
Like everything, there's all kinds of ways of looking at it. And somebody who could describe something with a very long formula, I have tremendous, respect for. I'm in your camp. I don't understand the need for it. I would prefer to just build the damn thing.
Well, what I wanted, because I was that service tech that was out there on a Friday night at 10 o'clock at night trying to get heat in a building. And I wanted something that the service tech can pull up and go, well, do you think it could be this is too small? And just get a rule of thumb. It's not, my books are not engineering or design manuals. They're just a way of looking at it and trying to focus you in the right direction for servicing.
Ferments out nicely, has really nice.
Well, and I can't, and you've done that in your books. I mean, you've given everybody an opportunity to be able to have something to go to, which has been phenomenal. Much like Dan Holohan wrote his Lost Art of Steam Heat.
Right.
I know a lot of people have servicing boilers on their, and I do on my bookshelf, much like your bookshelves in the back. Mine don't look much different. But I have a couple of your books. Actually, I have 4 of them sitting on my bookshelf. And if I actually shot this from my office, 2 of them are the steam books for breweries because I'm very involved in helping people improve their brewing process, not particularly their brewing, but their brewing process to get the
No,
most out of what they want.
Yeah. You know beer like the back of your hand, brother. We all know that.
Can I mention something that you guys as a boiler manufacturer will get a kick out of this? I got a call one day, and this guy, he was obviously frustrated. He owned a brewery, and I was probably number 8 in the people he called, and he said, "Do you have a boiler with a bottom discharge?" I said, "Yeah, it's a drain valve." And he said, "No, I'm serious. I need a steam boiler with a bottom discharge." I said, "Well, who told you that?" He said, "My plumber." He said, "My plumber said steam won't go up, it only goes down. So
Oh
I need
shit!
to find a boiler that has a bottom discharge." I said, "You know what?" I said, I wanted to laugh, but I said,
I would have laughed.
I said, the first thing
Can't do
you need
it.
to do is find someone that knows something about steam, because this guy knows nothing about it.
Right.
What he wanted to do was he wanted to get this boiler, have one that discharged down, and have all the pipes run along the floor like trip hazards everywhere.
And what's aboard the Hartford Loop?
No. So I told this owner, and he said, "Really?" I said, "Yeah." And so I told him to get onto a couple different sites, and I said, find someone on there, find someone that has experience on steam, because it's going to be a nightmare for you, and you're going to end up being really dissatisfied. But that's just crazy, some of the stuff you hear when you're out there.
So Ray, it may be a brewery I was in that I went in, and they were having their brew house, of course, was a 7-barrel brew house, and their steam boiler was on the 2nd floor. And
Wow.
I walked into their boiler room, and the boiler room was at least 240, 250 degrees.
Oh.
I walk in, it's worse than walking into an attic in summer when you're doing air conditioning work. And I said, "Are you brewing today?" He says, "No." I said, "So why is the steam boiler on?" And he said, Well, the guy who put it in said I have to run it 24/7, 7 days a week." And I look at the pressure gauge, and the pressure gauge is at 27 pounds.
Oh my
And
God.
and I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at the 7-barrel system, and I said, "And is everything working?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Good." And I'm just there. He doesn't know me from Adam. I'm just taking a brewery tour. I mean, he has no idea my knowledge base. And I said, "Okay, let's go downstairs and try your beer." And that was a Columbia boiler running 27 pounds of steam 24/7.
Oh my gosh.
And the pipes ran across the ceiling at 40 feet and dropped down to the 7-barrel system. And the steam inlet on those is about 12 feet off the ground, and the condensate is coming off but it was just nuts.
Did you tell him?
No, that's not my job, dude. I was there to drink beer and take a brewery tour. I just wanted to see their shiny new stainless. No.
Call me if you didn't.
When I'm not wearing my smart hat, I just walk in and drink beer. So I asked him why he didn't put the boiler downstairs, and he said we had no room. I said, "I'm looking downstairs and I see all sorts of room, and I have no idea why they did what they did. I have zero reason for it, but it's working."
I think the contractor knew what he did.
But it's working. I mean, the bottom line is it's working. I don't know how long it's going to work. I mean, what were your thoughts on something like that? Would you put the boiler upstairs or downstairs?
It doesn't. I have no problem with it going up above it, as long as you have the boiler feed tanks and pumps that can to take it up there. There was, when they were first coming out, when you started to see a lot of breweries, there was a lot of discussion about what constitutes a boiler room, and do the steam boilers for a brewery need to be inside a boiler room? And I know here on my end of the state was the building inspectors were really having a tough time. So the idea was that they were telling people they have to put them into a room that's separate from another room. And that may have been what happened with it, Steve. It's just, and there was nothing in writing. And when I would talk to brewers, I would say, they would talk to the municipality, and municipality would say, well, you need to do this. And I always asked them, I said, well, can you quote me the code that you're referencing? Because these inspectors, they make it up as they go. And I always say, hey, look, my customer needs to know. So I said, so I can let them know. And so all of a sudden I'll say, well, I'll get back to you. Well, what if it was someone that, because a lot of times these inspectors come across as really gruff and they're intimidating to people. So
No, really?
yeah. Well, but what if they put it into a room that they didn't need to have it in, and so.
Well, do you know the difference between a grain mill and a grain crusher?
No.
Okay, so a grain mill needs a explosion-proof room. A grain crusher can be out in the open, and they're both sold with the same stock number. It's just what you tell the inspector they are.
No way. Okay.
Change the wording. Change the wording in your favor.
Oh, that's awesome.
So anyway, so
That's a Philly trick.
no, that's an industry trick. I hate to say that, but it is. But I mean, you've written, I would say 50% of your books are on Steam. I'm just glancing over it, and 50% of your books are on hydronics, right?
Uh-huh.
So, and you do mostly commercial hydronics.
I do.
Today, are you doing commercial condensing boilers? Like our FTG goes to 2.4 million BTU, runs, you can go up to 8 on that. That's, I mean, that's 19 million BTU basically, rounded off, right?
Right.
And fits through a standard man door, only 54 inches high, and really will fit wherever a cast iron boiler is. But I mean, have you done much large condensing boilers? I mean, I have one in Germantown Academy that we replaced Patterson Kelly with, and they couldn't be happier because they can control it off their computer through their Modbus system, and it's run like a champ.
We have the company we used to represent. We're no longer with them. They had a condensing boiler. We used to sell those, which were made by a different company. But
it was a boiler from a boiler company that didn't make their boilers.
Exactly.
Okay, good. I just want to make that clear. And so if anybody's unclear about that, there it is.
Awkward,
I'm already thinking.
But they put the logo on the front, so that's all that matters.
We make boilers for people that aren't making boilers.
Yeah, we have been known to make boilers for people who don't make boilers that just put their logo on their boilers. Yes, and actually we put the logo on their boilers and send them to them.
We make boilers for people who make boilers. So
yeah, it's,
just saying.
Most of mine lately, we're starting to see where we're looking at we have a newer line that they have a condensing boiler. We're relatively new with them, and theirs goes a lot bigger than what you're talking about. But I'm definitely I'm a big advocate for the modular boiler systems.
Cool. So shameless plug for Ray. Ray, how do people get a hold of you?
My books are sold on Amazon, and they do all my publishing for me. The only one that the Boiler Operator's Guide was published through McGraw-Hill, and that was a real honor, and it was the hardest book I've ever written. They asked me to rewrite one of their classics, and it was from 1980, I believe it was. And so I rewrote that for them during the pandemic. And the hardest thing I've ever done, because I tried to keep the original author's voice intact. And it's hard to do because my way of writing is really different than what that person was. But it's funny, the references in that book, they were referencing that women don't belong in a job site. And you're like, oh my God, how did this guy sell any books? But anyway, Fire Ice Heat is my website for my company. I also have one. It's called Brewing with Steam, and I give tips to breweries, and I write a blog post on there once a month on
Yes, you do on Brewers ProBrewers.com. Yep.
yeah. And my books are on ProBrewers.com as well. The Steam books for breweries.
Oh, I know. I've referenced them in all of our and you know that you see it in the chat sites when we're
Right.
discussing things on Facebook. So I mean, and then of course your email is ray@fireiceheat.com.
It is.
Yep. So if anybody needs to reach out to you there, books on Amazon. And I'll just close with this. If you had anything you do on a Saturday, what would it be?
Fishing. I absolutely love fish.
I like that.
Fly, rod, or
Not just rod. I read something somewhere that they said if you're ever working through a problem, this was a consultant was paid a lot of money for this. The best thing you do is go out and sit on the edge of a lake or river and fish, because you're out in nature, you're relaxed, and you're also focusing on your fishing line, and any problem or issue that's going through your mind will be resolved quickly. So, but that's what I like to do.
A very lucky day. You got plenty of time to think about
Yeah.
I like it. I like it a lot. So cool. Well, Ray, it's 8:05. I don't want to keep you long. I want to see if there's any questions out there, boys. Is there any questions for Ray?
No, we've been pretty good. We have Malik, our famous watcher, and our famous supplier of pictures.
I think everybody was just enjoying the fact that it was a discussion with one of the industry's illustrious.
Oh, thanks. When I'm closing, can I tell you a story about the craziest steam boiler service call I ever had?
Oh, I would love it.
We, one of my clients was a big building in downtown Pittsburgh, and they had a two-pipe steam system. So the guy called me and he says, "Oh, we have a tenant that's having a problem with their heat. They don't have a whole lot of heat in there." I said, "Okay." So I walk into there, and this guy has this shit-eating grin on his face, and I'm thinking, "What is wrong with you?" And I said, "Well, let me get down and look at the boiler." He said, "I don't think you have to. I think you should come into this side." I said, "Well, let me at least look at the boiler." And he said, "Okay." We went down and looked at the boiler. It's running perfect. So he said, come on. We got to go up and look at this where the tenant's having a problem." I said, "Okay." So we walked in there, and right on Fort Duquesne Boulevard, it was a hair salon, and all the women dressed in lingerie. And I'm like, "Oh." I said, "Well, I can see why you're cold, you know."
Yeah.
Say they had buses wrecking, they had cars wrecking in front of this thing because these girls are all out the front dressed in lingerie,
walking in the
the
walls.
middle of winter, cutting hair. They only lasted a couple months, but that was my craziest steam boiler job I ever went to.
So let's ask you the question: how many accidents were in front of that place?
No, that's not the biggest question. The question is, how long did it take for your haircut?
No, oh my God, I was so afraid that there was all the network cameramen were out front, you know, because this was a big thing in Pittsburgh. That, you know, these girls are walking around, and it was and just as they're out there, and the local news station is out there filming the front of this bus driver was looking in the window right through the light and T-boned somebody, and
Oh shit!
it was just the craziest place.
Oh
And,
my God.
That's a
but
great story.
thank you. I had fun. This was a lot of fun. I appreciate the opportunity, and you know,
Well,
even though we're competitors in the marketplace, I don't think we are. But like, I'll have people that'll say to me, "Who's your biggest competitor?" And I'll say, rather than a boiler company or a boiler rep, I always say it's Mitsubishi or someone that sells the VRF. You know, they're gaining market share on us, and we need to stick together as boiler marketers and manufacturers and make sure we get the message out. We sell the most comfortable heating system in the world.
And I think
Well,
that's what I was driving at earlier, is that how do we effectively get the message out that we're about comfort and we're about doing it the most efficiently. We create the environment. I mean, we need to make that sexy somehow, so smart entrepreneurial kids want to get into it.
Well, yeah. What frustrates me is I've consulted with some of the different organizations and you know about losing market share, and I said, you know, you're doing it wrong. Like for instance, three days ago or about a week ago, there was a site in some resort town in Bahamas, I think, and 3 people died as a result of being overcome by refrigerant poisoning.
Or was it
And
refrigerant?
I always joke around, like I'll make light of it, and I'll say, you know, you don't really know if there's a refrigerant leak in your system. You know, you have to go through and you have to test for it. I said, if I have a hydronic system and I have a leak, I look up at the ceiling towel and I go, damn, it's got a spot on it. I have a leak. There's nothing to it. It's safe. It's very efficient. There was a director of energy or in England was talking about, you know, we're getting away from boilers. We're going to go to the heat pumps, whatever. And he acknowledged that they're not very comfortable. He said, that's just something we're going to have to give up on. Meanwhile, this guy had a boiler in his house and never changed it. You know, I mean, so he had comfort, but he was one of the elites. So,
well, I mean, yeah, you know, to a hybrid system, if you really want to have refrigerant, you know, but I mean, what we're doing is I think hydronic is the most efficient way to deliver heat.
exactly.
Is it the most efficient way to create heat? And so maybe that's the hybrid that's coming in the future, is like an air to water heat pump, where you're heating water hydronic as the distribution system, but you're leveraging the efficiency of a refrigerant system to create that.
Air or water.
Well, we do that all the time now with ground source heat pump, where we're boosting the water. I mean, we're running our condensing boilers at no more than 90, 92 degrees over a system with a ground source heat pump, and it's working great. But so Ray, I have to ask you, okay, the tree huggers in California and the jackrabbits in Washington, D.C. How's that for trying to keep it politically correct?
Okay. That was pretty good. That was pretty good, but
would like us to believe that somehow that we're going to go 100% electric. And we started to have this conversation before we went live, though we were still on. And you had, and if anybody has, if you guys, those of you on here tonight, if you have not signed up for Ray's monthly newsletter, you should, because I thanked Ray for a graphic he had and a little story below that graphic regarding the gas industry and electric versus going to everyone in the nation or going to one supplier. And would you like to expand on that a little bit, Ray?
Sure. I'm not an engineer. What I looked at it, and when I talk to these people and I see everybody say we're going to go green, and I look at, in the United States right now, 40% of the electricity is generated with natural gas, 20% with nuclear, 19% with coal, and 20% is renewables. Now, renewables is wind, hydro, solar. So if we say, okay, we're going to go to all electric, well, then we're going, and we're going to eliminate coal, we're going to eliminate nuclear. Europe is eliminating nuclear, and we're going to try to eliminate coal. So how are we going to generate electricity? I mean, there just isn't enough natural ability that we can do it, not with our infrastructure. So we're going to have to increase gas. So you're going to use a gas to generate electricity, and maybe you're going to get 50 or 60% of your electricity generated with gas. It doesn't make sense to me. If I have a gas pipe at my house, this is what I said before we started. If I have a gas pipe going to my house and I have a 96 or 98% efficient boiler, how is that less efficient than sending that gas to the power plant, having the power plant generate electricity, which is going to be between 55 and 75% efficient. And then all the losses, the transmission losses from the power plant back to my house, how is that greener and how is that better? I just don't get it. And
So
everybody I've talked to about that has, they're saying, well, it's greener. Electricity is 100% efficient. I'm like, the process isn't though. So
I like the fact that in the newsletter it said it was a mock conversation with a gas supplier, with a gas company,
yeah,
assuming it was one large gas company. And I'll try to paraphrase this, and I don't have it in front of me, so I'll go from memory, right, which could be just me, but it said, so Mr. Gas Supplier, what do you feel about the eliminating gas to all houses and going directly to the power plants only? And he said, well, I still sell the same amount of gas. In fact, I'll sell more, but instead of a couple million customers, I'll have one. Oh, let me think about this. Okay.
exactly. I couldn't understand why the gas company was behind this. And then it realized that you're right. They're going to have one big customer and they're going to sell gas to them and they're going to let the electric company deal with all the homeowners and
Yep.
owners.
That's a win-win.
I mean, they don't have to worry about their gas pipes. They don't have to worry about their distribution. They don't have to worry about their meters. They don't have to worry about reading them anymore. They don't have to get the calls in the middle of the night from somebody saying, my boiler's not working. I think I'm out of gas, whatever. They don't have to deal with any of that anymore. They have one guy, one place, one pipeline, one place to pump it. They're done.
Yep.
And the gas company loves it. They don't give a shit. They'll be selling more because, as you said, the electric production is at between 50 and 60% efficient, and then they send it out and it's losing between 20 and 60% depending on the distance you are from the distribution center. Then it's going into the transformers and coming down to the house, and by the time it gets to you, you're getting about 25 or 30% of what was generated. And oh, that's right, when you get it, it's 100% efficient, so it's much better. But now
Yeah.
you have a monopoly at both ends, right? You have one gas supplier going to the electric company, one electric company supplying all the homeowners. I don't care who you buy from, it's just one, right? It's not like Ma Bell when they split up Ma Bell and you have Verizon lines, you have Fios lines, we have different lines for those people. But it really, I don't know who's paying who in the government to push this, because you know that, and I won't get political in here too much, but the people in DC aren't smart enough to figure out what's the best energy
Well,
source.
that's why these large energy companies pay for armies of lobbyists to hang around Washington and, grease the wheels of government.
Yeah.
Got it.
Hey, I got to run. My granddaughter's here and I have to get her to bed.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for
everybody. I really enjoyed it.
Ray,
Thank you very much.
And will we see you at the show, Ray? Are you coming
What's
to the
that?
show? Are you coming to the
Oh, yeah.
show? Okay, we'll see you there, Ray.
Wait. You're coming to the Eastern Energy Expo in Connecticut next week?
No. His name's on the list. I know his name's on the list. I already know. I'm the education guy. I know his name's on the list.
No. Are you coming to the Eastern Energy Expo next week?
Oh, no. I'm not doing
I thought your name's on the list.
Really?
Yeah, you were on the list. I thought. It's maybe.
Well, Ray, you're supposedly teaching
don't see you, Ray.
Eastern Energy Expo next week, according to Jason, but we'll see what you there. If you're there, if you're not, you're not.
I thought I saw your name, Ray.
Anyway,
Uh,
Ray, thank you so much for coming tonight. We do all appreciate it. As Ted said, as Jason
Thank
said, we thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And I look forward to talking to you soon. Hopefully in Pittsburgh, we can have a beer when I'm out there next time.
That's great.
And maybe you and your son, because I've seen you now more than I've seen him. So is he still with the company real quick?
He is. He is.
Good. So let's get together. I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds great. Thanks. Nice meeting
Great.
you.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
Good night, all.
Thanks, Ray.
Thanks for watching the video today. If you'd like to check out more videos, see the link below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for all the future updates. And also check us out on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram.